I want to start by introducing myself. This is my Google footprint, so if you search for me, you get a bunch of things, my personal blog, my music. I'm a radio jockey for one of the technology shows in Chennai. I write newspaper columns, I give TEDx talks, and so on. My unofficial social networks, my resume on LinkedIn, my unofficial blog, sort of my personal blog, my photos on Instagram, my reading list, my music, which I share with people, and so this is me. And the reason I normally introduce myself this way is that the last 10 years have seen this spectacular change in the way people use technology. And so spectacular to the point where the larger cusp of innovation has actually shifted from the enterprise to the consumer internet. 15 years ago, the cutting-edge technology was always available in the enterprise. Enterprises had email first. Enterprises had desktop computers first. Not so in the last 10 years. The most usable technology right now is in fact on the consumer web. And that's the reason I sort of introduced myself that way, which sort of sets the context for this. Enterprise IT is ugly. It's just mind-bogglingly ugly, and it's just spectacularly ugly in ways that I can't even begin to describe. In a way, enterprise IT is sort of like this kind of represents. Many of you are probably familiar with things like this. This is enterprise IT, and most employees see the IT department as this. This is Sauron from. And this is a problem. This is often a problem, right? But we can make it sexy. And in fact, we can make it sexy, we can make it less complex as well. And in TCS in the last 18 months, we've called it the vivacious enterprise. It's something that we did for ourselves. Just brief context, we have, as of today morning, 280,000 employees. Right? It could be 290,000 tomorrow, but it's 280,000 employees. And this is for us, and we've grown from being 100,000 employees about 10 years ago to about 280,000 now. And this has posed tremendous challenges in how we do IT for our own employees. Of course, we do IT for everyone else, all Fortune 500 companies, but we don't do such a great job of it for ourselves, and that's what we sought out to change. And what I want to do is give you 5 takeaways, into 5 areas for you to think about in order to make IT sexy for your employees, right? And those 5 areas are, the very first thing is about embracing social networks. 2 things. I am not speaking of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, what have you. And 2, I'm not speaking about the technology. It doesn't matter what platform or tool, SharePoint or Connections or any of those other things you use. I'm speaking about this larger idea of people being central to the user experience of IT, right? So what I thought is that I'll share what we do at TCS, and maybe that'll give you some ideas. In the last 1 year, we've moved our entire intranet into a social intranet. In the sense that I have a personalized timeline based on the department that I belong to, the people I subscribe to, my interest areas, and corporate communications. If I'm not interested in corporate communications, I can shut them out if I want to, and so on. So essentially, we've turned the intranet into something that people can consume information and knowledge first, and then if they want to fill their timesheets and access transactional applications, as you can see, they do that if they want to, right? So essentially, people greater than transactions, right? So that's the fundamental message here. The second interesting thing that I want to speak to you about is that we're trying out new and interesting ways by which we can tap into the collective wisdom of 280,000 employees, right? And one of these interesting use cases is what I call the Social Helpdesk. Okay? So we ran this experiment where we told people for a bunch of these newer applications that we're rolling out, why don't you sort of not raise a ticket, when you have a problem, but go post it on this community, and any other person with free time, if they have a solution, they can help you out. And they earn something called karma points, which is our virtual currency that we introduced, sort of gamified, where if I help someone out with their technical problem, I actually get karma points added to my profile. And interestingly, as you can see, it has over 49,000 employees currently active who are utilizing their spare time to help each other out in basic tech support. This is interesting because we started with 22 people budgeted for the help desk of some of these applications. In less than 6 months, we've cut that down to 3 people. Because pretty much all problems, most problems are sorted out by the social help desk. This is just one of the examples of what social networks can actually do inside your enterprise. This third idea about social networks inside the enterprise is how you turn the employee's identity into something that the person can curate, right? My contributions, my documents, my questions, my answers, my ideas, my challenges that I participate in, all of the knowledge that I create, who I follow, what communities I belong to, and obviously the gamification element of what we call karma, right? The way we do it is that if I interact with somebody from a different department, if I interact with somebody from a different geographical location, I actually get more karma points. So the social intranet is designed to award people who are breaking silos, who are crossing boundaries, who are helping out people from different locations and from different departments. So I want to make an interesting point about gamification in general. Two interesting points. 2007 was the first year in the West, Western Europe and the US. It's the first year of college graduates who do not remember an era before the internet. They've been using the internet since they were about 8 or 9 years old. It's the first truly, fully digital native generation that's joined the workforce. This is 2007. We are 6 years into that generation now in Western Europe and in the US. The second interesting inflection point, 2009 was the first year that the revenues of the gaming industry were higher than Hollywood box office revenues. So collectively, the iTunes App Store, the Nintendo, PlayStation, Wii, what have you, essentially made more money than Hollywood box office, right? So this is again a change in the way people interact with systems, right? And gamification essentially seeks to go after what we call intrinsic motivation. Why would I contribute? Why would I help someone else in the organization, right? So this is, and what we've essentially done is that all of HR now has defined all awards in the organization as a series of social badges that people can show off on their profile page. Best Team Award, Star of the Quarter Award, Corporate Social Responsibility Award, even fitness awards, what have you. So everyone, there's about over 200 awards that people get for doing things, for solving people. There are now awards for solving tickets. There are awards for people who post ideas to challenges. There are awards for people who answer questions. There are awards for people who essentially connect between the largest number of people within the enterprise. So the possibilities are endless, where essentially HR has come and said that, look, everything that you kind of do, that you really want to showcase, why do people contribute to Wikipedia? People contribute to Wikipedia not because they're paid. People contribute to Wikipedia because they get to showcase the fact that they are a Wikipedia editor on their profile. This goes back to my point about the Google footprint, right? When somebody asks me to introduce myself, just Google me. I don't have to send you a resume filled with a lot of lies that I'm good at this, I'm good at that. You just have to Google me, right? So in that sense, keeping that kind of metaphor in mind is really what gamification is about. And this is basically from what we do at TCS. So to sort of summarize the point about social networks that I spoke about, right? People are more valuable than transactions. Okay? And there's great value that in many cases we build complexity into systems that are best sorted out by getting people together. But instead, we code them as business rules, and we design them into systems that are completely unusable. In many cases, problems can be solved by finding the right person at the right time, and the larger your organization is, the larger what I call the cognitive surplus, which is the net amount of extra ability that you are not tapping into, which is all of that spare capacity that people have, spare tacit knowledge that people have, that they've either not captured or have not been asked the right question or not been given the platform to contribute, right? So this cognitive surplus, the larger your organization is, the bigger it is. And very, very interestingly, sometimes I get told that all of this stuff is very Gen Y. It really won't work in an organization that has non-Gen Y employees. That's entirely not true. the most active users in TCS are all people who are non-Gen Y. The reason being that they have the most amount of tacit knowledge to share. They are the ones with the experience, obviously. So it's a question of making sure that there is something in it for them, right? So that's the important thing. The second important element is that we've been doing knowledge management for 20 years. It doesn't work. Knowledge does not want to be managed. It wants to be set free. Right? And in that sense, I mean, that's to sort of put things in perspective. There is obviously value in structured knowledge. There's value in knowledge that can be searched for the right problem at the right time and given to the right person. So that does require a certain element of structuredness. But the biggest problem is that human beings do not like contributing structured knowledge. Human beings like conversations. Right? They don't like filling in 20 fields. They would rather just converse with a person and get liked for it and get badges for it. Right? So which is where a lot of the other advanced technology now, from text mining, etc., where the bigger challenge for IT now is converting the unstructured knowledge into structured knowledge. But the problem is that we've always assumed that structured knowledge will exist and will go on from there, but it never did. Most knowledge is actually tacit, and it's not even getting captured in the first place. Okay. The third interesting thing that we're seeing, and this is something that our CEO even said, I want people to stop using email. I want people, if you're sending an email to more than 10 people, that's not an email. It's useless. It's a blog post. It should not be. Email is great for small private conversations. It's great when you want to discuss something private. It's great when you want to discuss something with somebody outside your company. For discussing with your colleagues, there's no reason you should be using email. It should be a social discussion. It should be, if it's not confidential, if it can be seen by more than 10 people, it's not confidential. Right? It can actually be done in in some sense, this is a great. We're now experimenting with interesting extensions. Say, for example, are people more productive when they're given SLAs and they're given a workflow, a ticket comes into them and they solve it? Or are they more productive when they pick tickets from this stream that's coming and then they help each other and they do it in their own way and they do it in their own time, they pick the ones that they are comfortable with in their own sequence? The results are actually quite stunning. People are more productive when they don't do it in that workflow-driven way. And here's even more interesting. We ran a simple sentiment analysis of interactions between people who raise tickets with IT and their interactions over email and in that workflow system, and their interactions with people on an open social enterprise internal, not Facebook, of course, inside the enterprise. We find that there is significant negative sentiment when people deal with somebody else who's just doing a transaction for you. Right? They don't care who that person is. They don't see their photo. They don't see their identity. It's just someone from IT solving your problem. But when you actually bring it into a social platform, it's a far more, let me help you out. I may not be able to help you today. That's fine. It's great that you responded. I'll wait till tomorrow. So it's quite interesting that there is a value in moving a lot of your stuff to social interactions. And obviously the fourth point is about, there are certain processes that are worth gamifying, right? Gamifying in the sense of not just simple badges and awards, but in the sense of how it's what's called persuasive technology, where the systems are designed where, hey, you answered these 3 questions on a topic of your expertise. Why don't you answer these 2 more and we'll take you to the next level? So we'll give you a guru badge and so on like that. So these things tend to work, right? They tend to persuade employees to do the right thing, right? So that's how you design gamification. The second thing that can make IT sexy, apart from social networks inside, the concept of people being central to that. People being central is quite a common theme across all of this, but BYOD, bring your own device. Okay? And normally, in any crowd of people from IT, the moment somebody says BYOD, the response is usually, absolutely not. This is completely unacceptable. I mean, I cannot handle the security risk of losing data on an employee's own device, his own iPhone, his own rooted Android phone. I don't know what all software he has installed. He could be downloading email and then uploading it to Dropbox and uploading it to box.net, and I have no idea where all of this data is going and so on. Right? But the problem is that there's huge, this is really what the consumer digital experience is now. And there's no going away from it. The consumer digital experience is that I get the experience that I want, the functionality that I want. From an app, I can choose from 10 of them. I can reject, delete the apps that I don't want, and use the apps that I want to on my own device on my own terms. This is what people are used to, right? And yet, IT only offers this. So this is a problem. So in order to do that, this is what we've done. We now have a very initial program of about 10 applications, enterprise applications, including filling timesheets, clearing workflows, and some fun applications about, tracking your fitness, finding, employees, and then, accessing the social network and so on. That's available on the employee's own devices that they can enroll. And I want to take you through both the benefits as well as what the challenges can be when you go after BYOD quite seriously. Okay? One is that, so far we have about 30,000 employees already enrolled. 280,000, but 30,000 is a good number. We're already the second largest BYOD implementation anywhere in the world. More interestingly, we have 4,000 employees on what's called MDM, which is mobile device management. This is very important because what happens is, the moment an enterprise says that, look, we'll let you have your email and access to the CRM system and access to clear your workflow and all of that on your own iPhone. Great. But in case you lose your iPhone, we will remotely wipe everything. Which is a fair thing to do, except that the average person says, no, I will not let you touch my phone. Especially in the last few months with all of the stuff happening with the NSA, people are very, very, very careful about who has control over their devices and their data. Even if I'm working for a company, I don't want that person to have that control. And this is a communication problem more than anything else, right? So the difference is that a small number of employees who need to access very sensitive data, CRM data, financial data, and so on, they are the ones who have to sign up for MDM, not everyone. If I just want to access the social network, if I just want to fill my timesheet, I don't have to, right? So this is a huge leap, a huge security leap where we're saying that, look, that's a risk we're willing to take, okay? And how do we manage to take that risk is by intelligently applying certain kinds of technologies, right? In fact, you have to make some compromises. Don't worry, your enterprise apps will never be as sexy as the apps that you can download from the iTunes App Store, but it'll still be a huge difference from the traditional user experience that people are used to. Right? It's a simple thing. I fill my timesheets, I clear my workflow, but it's a purely online application, and it does absolutely zero local storage. Okay? In the sense that it's purely HTML5 based, so if I lose my phone, in 20 minutes my session is going to time out, and for all practical purposes, I'm quite safe. Right? So these are certain interesting, we can get into an entire discussion on that offline as well, but you can make certain compromises. There are certain apps that can be built natively, there are some apps that you need to build as HTML5, and that makes a huge difference. So these design constraints such as no local storage is really helpful. But there are two big challenges. Android presents a huge challenge. And in a country like India where the penetration of Android is significantly more than iPhone, enterprise manageability of Android devices is very, very difficult because there are 20 million variations of Android. And people often root their devices. And there's plenty of form factors. And there's a huge challenge in even saying that what devices will you support, what happens if an employee chooses to root his device, will you deactivate all of those apps, and so on. These are not simple questions, but you do have to take that first step. And there are huge benefits in an organization not having to manage 20,000 BlackBerry devices and just letting the employee own his own device. In many cases, apart from the 4,000 users, it's bring your own device and data plan. So because 3G costs are quite small, and most employees are willing to say that, fine, as long as you tell me how much data these enterprise apps will use, and we estimated that it's about 10% more than what you currently use, most people are willing to just let it go on their personal costs. And it's quite interesting. Most employees do end up signing up, despite the fact that we don't actually have to pay their mobile phone bills. But the 4,000 employees, obviously we do, right? But those are those existing BlackBerry users whom we're moving away to these newer platforms. So that's bring your own device. And the third thing is, again, one more thing that a lot of enterprises get very scared about is embracing open source. Okay. I really can't stress the value that open source is given as it, and especially some of the logos that you see there have made a massive difference in the last 1 year. And the problem is that most enterprises, large enterprises, tend to have this problem, which is that they still think that there is, they can do better than open source. And this is a problem because this is a nuanced argument. I'm not here to tell you that open source is always better. That's not the answer. There are obviously a class of problems where proprietary technology and intellectual property really works. There are now a class of IT problems that open source has solved for good, right? You barely think outside of Linux for your data center in most cases. Things like Apache and things like some of these things are now, nobody even challenges the fact that they are the best things to use, and they come at not a zero total cost of ownership. You still need somebody to support and so on, but that's significantly improved. I'll give you a very small sample of the sort of things that we have done in the last 1 year that has made a huge difference to how we manage enterprise apps and how we make them significantly faster, sexier, better looking, and so on. This is just a very, very small sample. I mean, it's not even the whole list. I just wanted to give you some examples of things that you may not have heard of. So Ansible is this open source project that allows us to automate server setups. Once we get pure hardware and we need to set up the OS, we need to set up a whole bunch of packages, and we can automate that entire thing using Ansible. So the first expert who does it, subsequently, nobody's skill needs to do it. And it's one example. Capistrano is something that automates code deployment, automates running all the test cases, automates doing all of these things and gives us the results. So we can actually do continuous integration. So where we actually build and integrate and deploy practically twice a week, which is unheard of in an enterprise. We are now heavy users of NoSQL key value stores like Redis and Memcached to improve the performance of enterprise apps. And we use Solar Cloud and Zookeeper for high availability search, something that now indexes pretty much not just all the social content you see, but documents and pretty much everything in the enterprise is now indexed by the Solar Cloud setup that we have. And we're now looking at lightweight, super fast, lightweight web servers like Nginx, which interestingly now powers about 30% of the internet. And most people haven't even heard of it. Most of your highest traffic websites in the world are now powered by Nginx, right? So open source essentially requires this thought process of what problems are you trying to solve, which of those can actually be solved, need to be solved by proprietary software, and there's the balance to be struck between maintainability, can I pick up, call a number and get support if I need to. But there are certain things like Nginx and Redis and Capistrano and Ansible where you just don't need to think, you just need to start using it. So there's absolutely no reason why you would ever need to go for anything proprietary in that case. And there's another important point, which is that open source development in the last 10 years, the reason why the consumer internet experience is so much more superior to your enterprise experience is that the consumer internet is pretty much entirely powered by open source. It's powered by the same people writing the same software. Twitter is powered by open source, as is Facebook. Facebook open sources all of the things that it uses, right from PHP to Memcached to everything. Twitter open sources all of the UI frameworks that they use and the changes that they've made to the Rails framework. So pretty much every consumer internet platform, highly scalable platform, contributes to open source. The last 2 points is, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, and I can't stress enough on this idea of embracing cloud as an internal philosophy. It's not about whether you will use the public cloud or not, whether you will use an Amazon Web Services or a Terramark or any of the other public cloud services, but it's about running your own data center as a cloud operation. In the last 1 year, we have moved to an operation where I can get a server for a new app in less than 24 hours. I make the request in 24 hours, I have the IP. I need a 16-core, 64-gig server. That's it, I get the IP in no time, right? So this is, and it's all obviously because of virtualization. So we're able to commission servers in very, very, very short time. So this is another important point. And I want to leave you with the last and slightly more disruptive thought. If you combine all of these four, if you combine social, if you combine people interacting with people to solve problems, if you combine open source, if you combine this notion of people using their own devices, and if you combine this notion of very, very, very agile ways to deliver infrastructure for all of this, is that you eventually get into something called the do-it-yourself culture. The future of IT is not the IT department. The future of IT will be the employees of the company. Okay? My 1-year-old son uses the iPad in ways that I would not have been able to use technology when I was his age. Right? So when people like my 1-year-old son join the enterprise, regardless of what role they join in, they will be tech savvy in a way that we can't even begin to imagine. Okay? And it's already happening. The digital native generation joining the workforce is much, much more tech savvy. There are 13-year-olds who post YouTube videos of how to do iOS development. There's even a 13-year-old New York kid who has published his app in the App Store, and he's made $1 million by selling his app on the app. So it's a 13-year-old kid. So in that sense, ultimately, I think we're moving towards what we call a do-it-yourself culture, which is that enterprise technology will be a set of APIs, will be a set of certain kinds of infrastructure. You combine all of this, and you let people build their own apps. And we've started a very early pilot program. We've seen some early pilot apps. Somebody's built a carpooling app using the social network. Somebody's built a timesheet analytics app using the timesheet API that we've given, person analytics app, and so on. And ultimately, this is exactly what will happen. People will be able to, if you have an internal company app store as we do, you can put in place an Apple-style mechanism of people submitting apps. You can review them, and if the architects like it, you can push it to production and essentially start commissioning it, right? So this is very, very early stages. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of new challenges. But at the end of the day, I think there's huge amounts of complexity that you're reducing if you empower your employees to build their own apps. So that's not going to happen overnight. It will take time. You'll have to do all of the previous steps before you get here. But so I want to leave you with these 5 points. Thank you.